Hello and how are you doing? Welcome back to Rock Cycle, now featuring a reclining chair. So let's get into today's topic, and that is Glastonbury Festival. It is the biggest indie festival in the UK, if not the world. So the headlines of that are a pretty big deal, like more than most festivals where the headliners are a big deal anyway. Every year there's lots of hype, lots of rumours around who's it going to be, who's it going to be. So let's see who it could be this year. Yes, these are all rumours that we're going to be looking at, coming from like e-festivals, different news websites, forums, Twitter, and my own thoughts and opinions. So yeah, these aren't the most reliable, but there's good reasoning behind most of these. So let's just get into them and have a quick look. Also think I really need to do something with all this space up here. It's so bland and boring, just white walls. I think we'll get some band posters in or something to add a bit more character to the background. First of all, let's get one of the big ones right out the way. And that is Oasis. Every year they're talked about, every year they're brought up as a rumour. Ooh, this could finally be the year they get back together. It's going to be their big reunion show. But it's just not going to happen, especially with the success of Liam Gallagher's second album out now. I think as long as these guys both continue to have a successful solo career, they're not going to look to come back together. I feel when the money runs out and they're not that successful anymore, it could be a different story. But for the time being, it just doesn't seem likely to me. So I think there's no chance of that, and I'm sorry to crush your hopes. Up next we have someone who's looking a lot more likely, according to the bookies at least, and that is Elton John. One of the most iconic musical acts of all time. It really is fitting to have him there, especially as he's currently in the process, he's about to start his retirement tour, which I think ends next year, and there's no more fitting place for him to end his career than to have a headline slot at Glastonbury. The man has more than earned it over his career. He has decades and decades of singles to choose from. He could put on a great show, go on for 2 hours. I mean, if he can still do that at this age. He's not short of music, that's for one thing for sure. And it's a similar story with the next person we're looking at, Paul McCartney. Now, how more fitting could it be to have at the 50th annual Glastonbury Festival to have one of the original Beatles there? One of the most important and influential British acts of all time, probably the most important and influential act of all time in the UK. Now, as far as I'm aware, Paul McCartney doesn't have any official retirement plans at the moment, but I would not be surprised if he is retiring pretty soon. He's in his 70s now. Like, how much longer can the man keep going realistically? And even if he wants to and will keep going, like, how long is he still going to be able to put on a good show? These two legends, I feel, are both quite likely to be there, and according to the bookies they are as well, but I don't see them booking both of them. They're a bit too similar. They're both just iconic singers from the last century. They're definitely good and have earned it, but I imagine we're going to be seeing just one of these two there. I think that's pretty much a guarantee, and I don't really know which one it will be. So I think that's one of the 3 headline slots nailed down most likely. So let's just look at the others, because I think that's a lot more open up. Right, this next band I could genuinely see headlining the festival, but it will certainly be a controversial one, and that is the 1975. One of the most hot, interesting and trendy bands at the moment. They are really up there. And as well, with a new album coming out, and from what we know from the singles so far, they seem to be going in quite a new and interesting direction, so they're certainly going to be very culturally important, it seems. In the recent decade or so, we seem to have really struggled to produce any bands that really are quite on the level of some of the bands I'll say later in this list, so no spoilers, but you know the sort of big bands that I mean. And while I say 1975 isn't quite like on the level of Oasis were at the moment, I think they definitely will be by the end of their career if they continue on this trajectory. And we see that Glastonbury likes to take a bit of a risky booking. They like to book some controversial things that we saw from Stormzy last year. I personally think that did pay off quite well, and I do think the 1975 are, yes, a risky booking, but far less so than Stormzy. Matt Healy's also very outspoken politically. He likes to chime in on very political issues, and the festival seems to be, a fairly political festival. They like to have big name political activists there. So I think that also means they're a bit more likely to be chosen, because it fits the sort of message that Glastonbury has. Right. So I do think I think there's a good chance we'll see them there. I think that's quite likely that we will. Up next we have the Spice Girls. Now I'm not quite sure if they are a headliner level act, but apparently if they will be playing the festival, Victoria Beckham might be joining them, so that certainly gives them a bit more of a push to be a headline act, as well with their stadium tour they've just done of the UK. They certainly would be a surprise booking, and they're really not one that I'd be talking about on this list if they hadn't said lots of strange things in interviews. Like, they've been talking about it a lot. They've been talking about it in a way that makes it seem like it's almost already been booked. I can't remember off the top of my head what it was that was said, which is bad, but I'll just show a few things on the screen if I remember in editing. So this all makes me think it's rather likely that they will be there. It's just a question of whether they're headlining. I kind of feel like they'll be the act that's on right before the headliner, but I think they certainly could be the headliner, but it may be a bit of a weaker one perhaps. Maybe that's just because I was never really caught up in all the Spice Girls hype. I was a bit young at the time. I listened to a few of the songs, but I never really got that into them, so they're not a big act in my opinion. But on to someone who definitely is, and that is Fleetwood Mac. I personally think this is a little unlikely because it's been made public knowledge that the festival really wants to have them, but that Fleetwood Mac just want too much money for it. And Glastonbury really don't have to shell out a load extra to hire them, when they can just, it doesn't really matter too much what the lineup is. Well, it certainly does to a degree, but people are going to come, it's going to sell out every year regardless, even if it does have one slightly weaker headliner. So maybe because it's the 50th anniversary, Glastonbury will be able to throw a bit more money at them, but we'll just have to wait to see if they manage to sort out some deal, I guess. As soon as it is possible for them to book Fleetwood Mac, they definitely will. It's just a question of whether they can this year. So I don't think they're the most likely of acts, but I wouldn't entirely rule them out just yet. Right, another iconic oldie act is Led Zeppelin. I mean, at this point, calling them Led Zeppelin is a bit of a cheek because they've replaced a fair few members from the original lineup. But even so, like, it's such a big and iconic name. And while they haven't entirely ever ruled out doing shows again, it does seem very unlikely at this point, I think. But it is the magic of Glastonbury. They can do things that no other festival or venue can do. They can convince acts like this to reunite to put on one great final show. So yeah, while their name has been thrown about quite a bit this year, I don't really see any particular reason that it will be them. I mean, it would definitely be a great booking if they do manage to get them. But at this point I just feel we just all need to give up on our dreams of Led Zeppelin finally headlining Glastonbury and just move on and look at the new generation of acts. But before we do move on, we have one more old classic act to look at, and that is The Who. Now, I personally love these guys, but compared to a lot of the other more old iconic bands who are really big and really influential back in their time, The Who don't really seem to be as culturally relevant anymore. Now, they are still going, they're doing a few shows next year already, and they did a few shows this year, and they've spoke about working on an album, but that doesn't really seem to have actually come to anything so far. The Who are a great classic British band that I think loads of people would love to have at a festival, particularly more of the older crowd rather than the younger crowd. So while they are still going, because they're also not going to be going for much longer, it'd be great to get them for one final time. It'd be a great farewell show for them to headline the festival as well. But with that all being said, I do feel the fact that they did a Wembley Stadium show last year and a few others, and are doing a few more shows this year, I don't think they'll be booked to play the festival as well. There's only so many sellout shows they can do in the UK, but well, I mean, I guess it is Glastonbury. They don't need to worry the same way that like Reading and Leeds or Download do about selling out, because it's a guaranteed sellout every year. So yeah, they're another one which I do think is more unlikely, but I wouldn't entirely rule out the possibility of them headlining. Right, this next one's a bit of a change up, and that is Post Malone. Glastonbury has had a fair few hip hop artists in the past few years headlining, most notably Stormzy last year. And while I don't quite think they're going to do the same as Reading and Leeds and make it a regular thing to every year always have one sort of hip hop artist there, I think they're going to be having them more and more often. And besides all that, Post Malone is one of the best-selling artists at the moment. He's also one of the most important and influential artists. I do talk a lot more about that in my Post Malone album review video, so a bit of cheeky self-promotion if you want to click up here or on this side, I can't remember. Just click somewhere. But I do think he is one of the most important artists of this decade, perhaps this century so far, the way that he doesn't care about genre boundaries. He does his own thing and he makes it work perfectly. Yes, he has only had 2 albums out, and typically you need 3 or more albums to headline normally. That seems to be a general rule of thumb at festivals. But last year they put Stormzy on and he's only had 1 album, and Post Malone's had, well, double the amount of albums and a lot more breakout singles than Stormzy has done. So I wouldn't be too surprised really if they want to get him at a festival. He's the kind of new innovative artist that they like to have there. So I think he might be fairly likely actually for them to book him. But I'm sure that will go down a bit controversially, to say the least. Now, someone who will definitely go down a whole lot more controversially, but is also being thrown about quite a bit in all these rumour sites, is Ariana Grande. Now, she wouldn't be the first pop headliner like we've seen in the past with Beyonce. But although the festival is moving in a more pop-based direction generally, it's still nowhere near a pop festival in the same way that like Reading and Leeds has moved into a more pop festival direction. But I think she's definitely one of the biggest artists out there right now. So really, she does deserve to be headlining at the biggest festival right now. She headlined Coachella, which is the American equivalent of Glastonbury, kind of, but Coachella really is just a very different crowd. Again, I've got a whole video about why I dislike Coachella, which may appear up here if you want to click on it. But I think she definitely does deserve to be headlining Glastonbury, whatever you think of her music. And there's definitely a big push to have more female headliners at big festivals like this, so I think they're going to look to people like her to get on there, because we ain't going to get too much into the politics here because I don't want you to hashtag cancel Rock Cycle. But yeah, they're just trying to get more women on the show, so I think who is the biggest female artist right now? Her or Billie Eilish, I guess, but Billie Eilish isn't quite at the headliner level yet. Or our next artist, and that is Taylor Swift. She has just announced a very big world tour next year. And I think, if I remember correctly, there aren't any UK dates on it, but there's also a gap around the time of Glastonbury Festival. Now, yes, in the past it has been made known that she doesn't really like playing at festival shows, she much prefers to do her own show. But she is doing a few festivals on this tour, so it's not an impossibility for her to do them. Like Ariana Grande, they are both 2 of the biggest selling artists out there right now. They have 2 of the biggest fan bases. And yes, it will be controversial for them to headline. I think they certainly have earned it and deserved. They're certainly at that level. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see one of those 2 there. I don't think we'll see both of them because they're a bit too similar. So I reckon we could have those 2 there. Well, one of those 2 there. Yes, I'm aware this video's going on quite a bit. I'm getting a bit distracted talking, but let's get into the next act. There's only a few more left, I promise. This one is the bookies' favourite to win, and that's quite a surprise for me, and that is Foals. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Foals. They haven't released a bad album, and with album number 6, I think it is, coming out soon, they should be doing pretty well for themselves. What we've heard of that album so far is sounding pretty good. But to me, as much as I love them, I don't really think they're quite up there at the same level of other Glastonbury headliners. They haven't even had a #1 UK album. They were so close to doing it with their last album, but just got beaten by Dave. They are quite a strange band. They're not really one that's talked about too much. They don't get much radio play. You don't hear lots about them, usually. But then when they're at a festival, they're like headlining or extremely high up on the lineup. Like when they last played Glastonbury, which I think was 2016, 2017, they're in like the top 6 or 7 acts on the poster. I also feel Foals could be a quite likely booking for Reading and Leeds Festival, and I don't think Foals will be at both festivals. I reckon we've got a pretty solid chance that we'll see them at one of the 2. So it's kind of, I guess, well, 50-50 chance whether it's Reading and Leeds or Glastonbury. I think they probably could headline Glastonbury, but I do think they would be a weaker choice. Maybe they would co-headline or be a big name sub-headliner act. But then again, I'm just some random guy rambling about the music he listens to on his phone on the internet, and the bookies all seem to be making them the most likely to be there, and they probably know a heck of a lot more about it than I do. So I reckon with those odds that they've got, they will be there. Up next, we now got another one of my favourite bands, and that is Green Day. Now, this band has been heavily rumoured since the beginning, and the announcement of the Hella Mega Tour putting them in the UK at the time of the festival and not playing the time of the festival. I think they're playing one day at the festival, but they're not playing the other 2 days, so they're in the UK and free to play at the time. Now, as much as Green Day are a deserving headline act, I don't think they will play. I think when they're already doing 4 UK stadium shows that week and to do a festival as well, that's just too much. They're a very big band and they have a very big following, but that is a lot of fans. They need to be paying a good amount of money to come to their shows. That'll be a few 100,000 fans in total going to see them that week. Now, maybe Green Day are big enough to pull that off, maybe not, but I just don't think they'll want to do that. Why book them at the festival when they're in the UK already? If you want to see Green Day, you're going to go to their shows, you wouldn't book the festival. So I don't think it'll be very likely that they will be headlining Glastonbury. But I would not be surprised if they make an appearance as a secret set there. Green Day have done them in the past and they seem to quite enjoy playing live. They're the kind of band that would do a secret set again in the future. So I reckon we'll see them appear at Glastonbury to do that. Now, it wouldn't be Glastonbury if we didn't talk about the Arctic Monkeys. One of the youngest ever bands to headline the festival, over 10 years ago now, and they've only got bigger since then. They are probably the best and biggest band Britain has produced this century. And, well, a lot of people seem to be making it out to be that this is going to be a 50 years of British music style celebration festival. I don't really know if that's just sort of fan theories because of it being the 50th year, or if the festival have actually said anything themselves that it's going to be a special celebration of British music. But I feel you couldn't do that and not have the Arctic Monkeys there. We haven't seen them there for a few years now. They've played it multiple times headlining. But honestly, if we were going to see them there, I think last year would have been more likely with the success of their most recent album at the point. Like now, if they were to headline next year, it'd be a bit awkwardly long since the last album, because often headliners happen to coincide more or less with the timing of releasing a new album. But I mean, Arctic Monkeys are at a level they can just turn up on the day and say, oi, we're headlining, and Glastonbury will be like, yeah, come on, get on stage now. So I reckon there could be a fair chance they'd be there. I just feel they were more likely to have been there last year and they weren't, so yeah, maybe they will be there this year. I think there's decent chance. And now last, finally, but no means least, we're going to be talking about Blur. Now, despite doing one show this year, Blur are officially on hiatus still, but they have made it clear to never rule out them reuniting and coming back. They are a great band, and they beat Oasis back in the day in their whole battle of Britpop. So they're one of the most defining, iconic British bands in the 1990s, and they really pioneered the Britpop subgenre, which is still really influencing a lot of the rock and indie rock that we're getting in the UK at the moment. These are also being rumoured on the eFestival site, which in the past has got a fair few things right, but not everything, so take it with a pinch of salt. I think it'd be fun to have them. They're a great band. They get a lot of people excited, but I just don't really see too much of a reason why to book them now. So I do think, again, they're one that is possible, but a bit more on the unlikely side. But, well, I still feel it's more likely than Led Zeppelin and Fleetwood Mac. So I ended up doing a few more names than I meant to, but I couldn't really choose any to cut. But there's like the dozen or so most likely acts, in, well, my opinion, and well, a few other people's stolen opinions to headline Glastonbury this year. If I had to say an exact set of headliners, I think we would be getting Elton John, Ariana Grande, and then Foals and 1975 co-headlining one day. I feel that's the most likely ones there, but I also feel that's a bit more too poppy for the festival. I think they want a bit more of a harder rock edge to it. So, what are your thoughts then? Do you think I'm right or wrong about any of these? Are there any names that I've missed out? Because Glastonbury's been one to surprise us in the past before and put out a few names out of nowhere that no one saw coming on as headliners. So let me know your thoughts and opinions on that, and also what are your thoughts and opinions on this current setup, I guess. It is a bit, I don't really know quite what I'm doing here in the new place yet, but I think this will do for the time being, I guess. Unless you all really hate it. But as always, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed. Want to like, subscribe, comment, share, etc, etc, that would be great. And I'll see you in the next video.